Hey everybody, welcome to Sweater Weather, a podcast about Canadian arts and culture. I'm Aaron Giovanone, a writer and professor.
And I'm Naomi Lewis, a writer and editor.
Naomi, we're back home.
Yay!
Yay!
Back home in Calgary.
Yeah.
After a very nice sojourn in Montreal.
Yep.
We did a lot. We learned a lot. We had a few mishaps. And a few
Adventures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to be back. We have a different setup here, but it is actually the same room as we've always recorded in here.
Aaron.
Yeah?
What's the weather like outside?
Well, it's extremely cold and snowy outside.
How would you describe that weather?
Oh, it's not actually sweater weather. I know what you're getting at.
I'm wearing a sweater.
It's parka weather, in fact.
Yeah.
And scarf all around your face weather.
That's true. Balaclava
That's right.
weather.
It's basically don't go outside weather, which is fine. I'm feeling like very cozy here in our condo. Happy to have work to do inside.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing we're supposed to do is our Patreon pitch. So if you like sweater weather, there's a couple things you can do to support the show. It would be really great if you, wherever you're listening on your podcast app, whether that's iTunes or Spotify, and there's a bunch of others that give you the option to rate. Give it so many stars. Now, it would be best if you gave it 5 stars, I'm not going to lie, but you can give it whatever you want, I suppose. Yeah, so a rating or review on any of those apps where you might be listening to us, like or a share when you see us on social media, and if you want to financially support the show, that would really help. There's a lot of costs associated with producing the show. So you could support us with a donation on patreon.com /Canadian Sweater. That's where you'll find us. There are different options there. You get like a few, at the moment, you get a few bonuses, like early access to the episodes and a couple of other options depending on what level you're donating. But in the future, we are working on plans to offer specifically bonus content that will be to subscribers only.
We sure are.
So you want to get in early on the ground level of supporting
You know, Aaron,
Sweater
if
Weather.
I were a listener instead of one of the co-hosts, I would subscribe.
Well, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You'd subscribe to your husband's podcast.
Well, I
That's
mean, if
nice.
I didn't know you.
There's a lot of ifs here, but
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
conditionals and theoreticals. Anyway, thank you very much for watching and listening. And
Yes, thank you.
And for your support.
Yeah. Today,
We're talking about The Tom Green Show, a comedy show that ran from 1994 to 2003 on Rogers Cable Access Television in Ottawa, the Comedy Network in Canada, and then MTV in the USA. So The Tom Green Show is kind of hard to define. It was truly wacky and innovative. I guess you would just say basically it had 2 main components, right? Short field segments where Tom Green is out on the streets, mostly in Ottawa, goofing off in public, pranking innocent bystanders, famously his own parents as well. Then the second part is these like in-studio talk show stuff, which is more like a parody of a talk show where he terrorizes Glenn Humplick, his kind of straight man and co-host.
Sidekick, you might say.
Sidekick, yeah. And he also like plays pranks on the studio audience as well. There are certainly like predecessors to this kind of comedy. Candid Camera, for one, running since the 1950s. Just for Laughs gags, where they play pranks on people in public too, with a hidden camera somewhere. But you have to say Tom Green brought this reality comedy to like a whole nother level. He adapted it to the 1990s. He made it cool. It was part of like alternative culture, kind of anti-comedy, kind of brought DIY artistry to it. And this is powered by the availability of small, cheap, portable cameras in the 1990s as well. So Tom Green really did something very innovative with the show. We should sing the Tom Green Show song. This is the Tom Green Show.
It's not the Green Tom Show.
This is my favorite show.
Because it is my show.
I do remember watching the show when it was on the Comedy Network, probably around 1997 or 98. There's a famous segment where Tom Green humps the carcass of a moose on the side of a highway.
Well, and the guys are trying to give it CPR.
Is that what that's right, that's what the bit was.
Yeah.
It makes it funnier. But still, it looks like it's the Trans-Canada. This was part of a road trip that Tom Green and his friends, who helped produce the show, Derek Harvey and Phil Giroux, took across Canada. So they found a dead moose on the side of the highway. Now, I thought when I saw this bit that it was hilarious and shocking.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Probably, but I mean, I was like, 16, 17, something like that. So it was maybe hilarious because it was shocking. Now watching that segment again, like I don't really like it. Like any of the stuff that involved dead animals, which is actually quite a bit of his pranks. Like he has a famous kind of one with a dead raccoon. So on the Mike Bullard show, which was a late night comedy talk show, maybe it's a future episode of Sweater Weather, I'm not sure, but Tom Green showed up with a dead raccoon and it was like rotting and smelly, and he brought it out and he like showed everybody, and people were like gagging, and so people were throwing up and stuff.
My God.
And then later on he like cut it in half.
Ugh.
And it made the whole studio audience retch. This is
Holy
yeah,
shit.
I know, it's gross, right? Any of the stuff with animals doesn't really work that well anymore. That shows a sign of
and
how
meat, a lot of meat.
A lot of meat stuff as well. Yeah, he would just do weird, surrealist.
Cover himself in meat.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe that's where Lady Gaga got the idea for that meat dress.
That's
that
right.
She wore.
Yeah, I mean the fact that the weird treatment of animals, like even dead bodies.
Yeah.
It's just like it doesn't really work anymore. It's a sign of how our ethics and attitudes towards animals have changed.
That is very true.
Yeah, yeah. Now another segment I remember vividly was one of Green's famous pranks on his parents, and here he takes his parents' car without their knowledge, and he has an auto body shop artist paint a lesbian sex scene on the hood of the car.
Not a realistic one.
No, it's cartoonish. It's a cartoon.
A pornographic cartoonish.
Yeah, it's pornographic.
Sex scene.
That's right. And so, and the part of that segment that still gets me is like Tom. So Tom waits in he waits in a garbage shed outside his parents'
in a garbage
house.
can.
No, it's like a shed.
He's in some kind of container.
Yeah, it's a shed where you'd put garbage cans in. Bigger shed.
He's in a box.
He's in a wooden box. So is a box a can in your?
It's a container.
He's in like a little wooden box out in in his parents' driveway, and he's waiting for his dad to come out all night so that he'll catch the surprised look on his dad's face. The part that's still funny to me about this is the dad's really angry. He stomps off to the bus stop because he's now going to take the bus to work. He can't take his car to work any longer. And so Tom gets in the car and drives it to the bus stop where the dad is waiting with like maybe 8 or 10 other people. And just seeing the other people look at the car and laugh is really, really funny.
It is. It's great.
And Tom is like, Dad, what's wrong? Why don't you like your slutmobile? Anyway, you have to excuse the language. That is the title of the segment.
And it says slutmobile on the car.
And the car says slutmobile. Mm-hmm. That's right, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember that being very funny too. I don't think I was a super fan at the time. And I think like actually going back to it years later, I actually like it. I think I appreciate it more, to be honest, for as silly, as stupid as the show was. Like I remember thinking it was silly and stupid at the time, even though it definitely got me laughing sometimes. I think a lot of the segments that just weren't super funny, they were just weird, like the playing with meat or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like that stuff at the time was just like, for me, like, meh, I don't know if I would sit through all of that for the eventually maybe really funny bit that you see. But now in retrospect, especially the way that things are on YouTube, you kind of get all the best bits. You can find all the best bits individually and just watch those in a row. And then you're like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah, watching TV is a whole other experience now.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what are your earliest memories of Tom Green?
Well, I grew up in Ottawa, as I've mentioned before. And he also was in Ottawa when I was there. He was about 5 years older than me. Mm-hmm. So he was like in the same kind of social circles as I was, because I was kind of into like going to punk shows and stuff like that. And I was indie art scene, and I was a co-op student at the radio station at Carleton University. My sister was actually a co-op student at Rogers 22.
Oh, okay.
TV station. And so she worked like on the Tom Green show a couple of times. Like she got to try do the cameras and editing and stuff.
Oh, really?
On different shows, and the Tom Green show was one of them.
Amazing.
Actually, there were 2 radio stations, and I was a co-op student at both of them, at Ottawa U and at Carleton at different times. Mm-hmm. And Tom Green had a show at CHUO, the Ottawa U radio station, so I saw him around there too.
Okay.
And he was just kind of like part of my world. Like everyone in Ottawa kind of knew who he was. He was one of those big personalities.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure like everyone else in Ottawa, I did like have personal run-ins with him. And he was like, and it's funny because we read his memoir. You read it more fully than I did, as we'll discuss. But in his memoir, he talks about how he worked on like having this kind of persona where he never cracked a smile or laughed. Like he just kind of was constantly in character. And that's my memories of meeting him, was he was that like very straight-faced but like bizarrely behaving person who would just kind of say the same things to you over and over in an attempt to like annoy you or to kind of get you to be like, what are you doing? And I feel like there was like a mean element to his humor. I've always felt, or I felt in the past, there was like a bullying, a mean element to his humor.
Certainly one-on-one, it's mean.
Yeah, like to the person that's like the butt of the joke, right?
Yeah.
And even though he said in interviews and like in his book that it was never mean-spirited, like I don't really buy that because, and I mean, I had my own little thing with him where I felt bullied by him. Do you want me to tell the story?
Of course I do. You have a personal Tom Green story.
Well,
of course
I
you want to hear
mean,
this.
like I'm sure again, like this is like he just went around doing this all day, every day to everyone he met, so it's not like a special story. But there was this guy I liked who I was sort of seeing, I guess. And I was when I was a teenager, and he was a friend of Tom Green's.
Okay.
So for a brief period, when I was kind of hanging out with this guy, I would go over to his house, and like occasionally Tom Green would just like show up at his house. And one time he showed up at the front door, and like he and the guy that I was seeing or whatever, he would kind of try to do this Tom Green act too, where he would like just
play along.
Yeah, or even like sort of talk in this sort of silly voice and just sort of say things that were like not true, just try to make you believe it. Called razzing, as they refer to it.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, they both claimed that Tom was there because he was in the neighborhood as a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman, and that he was like on his route and he had just dropped by. And like I had no idea if they were just saying that or if it was true, because it was like, to them it would be funny. Like I was the only other person in the room, but it would have been funny to make me believe that he was selling vacuum cleaners door to door.
Okay.
Or maybe he really was. I have no idea.
Probably. I'm guessing no. I'm going to guess no.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing that like was funny to them, was just to like make some person who happened to be there like think something was true that wasn't.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a prank.
Yeah, it's a prank, but it's like the whole point of the prank is like just to make someone else look dumb.
To fool someone.
Right. And then this guy, we broke up. So his name was Adam.
Okay.
And he was like a friend of, I think, Tom's from like their teenage years of like skateboarding together and stuff, which was like a couple of years earlier. And so we stopped seeing each other. And then for like years, whenever I saw Tom around town, he would do this like thing where he would see me and he would, like maybe he only did it once or twice, but I feel like it was more than that, because I would run into him places, like whether it was at like a show, just on the street. Like I remember one time just passing him on the street and he did it. Okay. And he would do this thing, and he's tall, really tall and skinny, right? So he kind of would loom over me and he would go, "Where's Adam? Where's Adam?" In this like that way that he talks, right? "Where's Adam? Where's Adam? Where's Adam? Where's Adam?" And you know how
he does like, that thing with his arms.
And he like gets into your face.
Yes, he like violates personal space.
He violates your personal space. That's part of his humor, was at the time. And so although maybe to him, like I can see how that was just like a random sort of surrealist performance that he was doing, because that was what he was always doing. Like to me, it felt like straight up bullying, and he was like making fun of me that I guess that his friend broke up with me, or that like to me, I felt like he was like, "Oh, you like my friend, but he doesn't like you," or something like that.
I mean, when someone acts weird like that, you wonder why. Like, what's the meaning behind it? Like
it felt like it was at my expense.
Yes,
for sure.
Sure. Well, it was at the expense of having a real conversation with you.
That's true. That's true.
In real life, that comes off that way for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean.
But when you're telling it to me as a third person observer, many years later, I'm like, that sounds pretty funny.
I mean, it's funny in retrospect, obviously. And it's not like I was really upset about it. Like, it wasn't something I thought about and like fretted over or anything. I just remember feeling kind of like he's a jerk.
Yeah,
you know?
It is antisocial behavior. Yeah.
But like at the same time, I had met him also like before that, just around, and I knew that he had this show on, like this was before the Rogers show. He had a show on CHUO, the Ottawa U radio station, and it was called Midnight Caller.
Yeah.
And it was on Friday or Saturday nights at midnight, and I used to listen to that and like really like it. Like I was a fan of it.
You were a fan of the show.
Yeah, I was totally a fan of it, and it was like a precursor to his TV show, really. But like it was all people calling in, and then he would just make fun of the people on the phone.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because people kept calling in.
Yeah.
Like they must have, I don't know why.
It was something like a bit like a prank call show, except people were calling in.
Well, I guess he also called out.
Yeah,
he did call it, but a lot of drunk people would call in, right?
And
he would make fun of them.
Right. Well, I mean, they're volunteering for this.
And they would have hilarious conversations. It was really good. Like I really liked it. And it started out like they'd play music, and they'd have these segments in between, and then eventually they just stopped playing music, and it was like all calls.
Yeah.
And that's why it was called the Midnight Caller. It was just phone calls, and it was great. And then there was, he was also in a rap group called Organized Rhyme, and I owned their
record.
Had it.
Oh, you owned the record.
Yeah.
Wow, we'll get into all of these.
So I was kind of a fan, and then I also like.
But in real life, you disliked him.
Yeah, and then I also watched the TV show like sometimes, but not religiously. But there were like parts of that show, like the ones where he pranked his parents, especially, that were like legendary.
Yes.
And then also because I was kind of knew the same kinds of people he did, like sometimes people I knew would be on the show and I would watch it because I wanted to see my friend on the show or whatever. So yeah, he was just kind of part of my universe. And then I also remember like him saying, or someone saying like that he was like Tom's goal was to be like super famous.
Okay.
And I was like,
he was ambitious.
And I was like, as if, like to me, I was
with
just
this
like,
performance?
There's absolutely no way someone I know could ever be famous. Like that's all I thought was like.
Wow.
And then it was like, oh well, guess that was wrong.
Well, you got your own personal Tom Green gag.
It wasn't even on TV. Like, what was the point?
I know. Well, it was part of his training for becoming the personality he would be. And that's what I learned from reading his memoir.
Yeah, same. Like, I think he was just doing that all the time.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the Tom, like a little bit of background about Tom Green. What an amazing personal anecdote to have here. Tom Green was born in 1971 in Pembroke, Ontario. It's near the Canadian Forces Base at Petawawa. That's where his father was stationed. Green's father, Richard, who was on the show a lot, getting pranked frequently, he was a tank commander with the rank of captain before he retired to become a computer systems analyst working for the government. And Tom's mother was a communications consultant, I think also working in the public sector. Now, Tom's brother, Joe, was born with a disability. This was the result of a birth defect that was likely caused by the father's exposure to Agent Orange.
Oh my God.
In Vietnam.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And that was a younger brother.
A younger brother. Yeah, a younger brother. So the Greens moved to Gloucester, Ontario. This is now a suburb of Ottawa. And this is where Tom attended Henry Munro Middle School. Now, Tom was, as he writes in his memoir, was first taken with comedy in grade 6 when he won a public speaking performance with a speech on comedy, all about comedy. So this is a quote from one of his, he actually provides this in his memoir. It's pretty funny. Sarcasm is a type of humor in which a remark means the opposite of what it appears to mean. Teachers are particularly good at sarcasm. I once told a teacher that I didn't think I deserved a 0 on my test. She said, "Neither do I, but it's the lowest grade I can give you." Pretty good joke.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit canned, but...
It's not exactly sarcastic what the teacher said, to be frank.
Well, he was in grade 6.
That's okay.
He was in grade 6. So other things young Tom Green did that contributed to his career in comedy: skateboarding. As skateboarders had to do in the early years of the sport, you'd have to do your skateboarding in prohibited spaces. There were no skate parks. It was illegal to skateboard anywhere.
They were rebels.
You were rebels, and you were being chased by security guards and angry people saying, "Get out of here, leave us alone," and the cops or whatever. So he was used to doing stuff in public spaces and then having to deal with the social fallout of it. Now, also, early skateboarders, they made their own videos. They self-produced. They recorded themselves doing tricks and stuff. And these videos in the skateboarding world were actually would be kind of cult hits, and they'd be sold by mail order. So that idea of making your own videos was something that Tom Green partly got from his years as a skateboarder. And you see on the show too, him and his friends doing skateboarding stuff. It's usually not presented as like, wow, this is really good skateboarding, because it's usually pretty basic, but it's like also just part of their comedy routine that they're doing. They're doing like maybe like kind of half-ass skateboarding tricks and then acting as if it's a really big deal that they did it or whatever. Okay. That's kind of like part of it. Now, another thing that a young Green would do is that he would ride the city bus and he'd pull pranks, much like he's pulling pranks on friends and acquaintances on the street. So with his friends, Phil Giroux and Derek Harvey, these people who go with him his entire career, he would whisper about robbing a bank so that to his buddy. So everyone else, he'd like kind of fake whisper so everyone else on the bus could hear. And then some people would get alarmed, other people would laugh and be in on the joke, and other people would get really mad. He'd put earphones, so he'd be on the bus. He'd put earphones on and stand on the step, the entranceway to the bus, so that the door of the bus wouldn't close. Ugh, and he would just stand there, and then the buzzer would go off, the door wouldn't close, people would be yelling at him, but he had his earphones on and pretend like he couldn't hear anybody. Yeah. And then people would be yelling at him, calling him all kinds of names. So he'd get off the step for a second, look around, and then step back down. Is
it funny or is it just being a jerk?
I mean, it's funny to, there is something extremely antisocial about this kind of comedy where so much of it is about breaking
societal
rules about how you treat each other. Yeah. But you're doing it for the sake of a third person observer.
Yeah, but if there's no third person observer,
it's terrible.
What's the point?
I know. And that's probably something in retrospect that some of Tom Green's old bits don't work, because you see that as being mean.
But even with the third person observer, it's mean, because like the reason it's funny is because you're in on the joke and someone else isn't, right?
Sure. I mean, there is a mean side to comedy. There's no doubt that there's a kind of humor that has to do with being superior. Yeah. And so, being a third person, not involved, but observing somebody getting messed with, gives you kind of superior distance from which you can sometimes laugh. But it depends on the tone and the spirit of the gag and how serious what's happening is. Yeah. Holding up the bus is not the most serious thing in the world, but like it does seem kind of a little mean. I think what happens with Tom Green's pranks is that because they're this comedy, what he does all kinds of different stuff. Pranks, gross out, kind of social, what would you call them? Stunts. Yeah. All kinds, songs. He does all kinds of
He does a lot of different
stuff. Does a lot of different stuff, and different threads of his comedy end up being taken up by others and end up being very influential. So, for example, the prank thing, Tom Green seems to be pranking anybody he comes across. And so, again, in retrospect, watching some of these old things where he's like making fun of a drunk guy or talking to someone who's an immigrant, doesn't speak English very well, you're like, ugh, that doesn't really feel right. In later comedians, when they start to prank people, they become much more aware of who they're pranking.
Like the punching up versus
punching down dynamic. So say Sacha Baron Cohen, who ends up doing something very similar to Tom Green, and he comes a little bit later too. I don't know how much direct influence there was.
But I don't think we can say that he wasn't mean, because he was also
but he was being mean to celebrities. Yeah, he was being mean to conservatives. Right. So it comes off as political satire, right? So that's a much more refined and targeted kind of version of this social pranking. Tom Green just does it. He just is like, it's new and it's interesting, and you get a sense he's experimenting. He's just trying to see what will work and what he can do. And absolutely. And it is pretty amazing to see, despite also being sometimes mean. So surprisingly, Tom was not a good student, but his sense of humor made him popular. He attended Colonel By Secondary School as well as Corrine Wilson Secondary School. In high school, he was elected president of student council solely on the basis of how entertaining he made the school assemblies. One gag he did at a school assembly was this. He rigged a cordless phone, which is new technology at the time, because this must be late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, super new.
He rigged this cordless phone to the gym's PA system. Everyone's gathered in the gym. And so he goes around, he approaches students in the crowd, asks them for their home phone number, and then he crank calls their parents with everybody listening on the PA system. Pretty good, right? And he even did it. He did it to teachers as well. He called their like wives or husbands at home. Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Isn't that really funny? And so he said that these were like really big hits.
It just feels too like, I mean, people do stuff like that, have done so much stuff like that since, but like, where was he getting these ideas? It was like so kind of fresh and new.
And it was made possible by the new technology of the cordless phone.
Yeah.
And this is a thread that we follow throughout Tom Green's career, is that he picks up on the comic possibilities of some kind of new communication technology. So that's one of them. Unfortunately, a new high school principal put an end to Tom's fun assemblies.
It's amazing he was ever allowed to do it in the first place, to be honest.
It's like the 90s, man, or the 80s. It's just like, it was a freer time in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, they would let you do probably things that were bad as well as good, I think.
I mean, it's bad, but it's like extremely entertaining.
Cranking. I mean, can you imagine today people getting crank calls from a school event? Like, the parents would be so mad that was allowed to happen.
Probably.
Yeah. Where was he getting his ideas, you asked? Well, the only thing I could really find that he mentions as influences on him are two. Mm-hmm. One of them is Monty Python for the absurd behavior, right? The absurdity. And another one is David Letterman, which was his was his favorite late night talk shows.
Okay.
And there's definitely an element of anti-comedy. David Letterman doing bits that were funny because they were not comedic in the expected way. And so there's a lot of influence from David Letterman, I think, in what he does. But in terms of...
But there's also that skateboard culture, like skateboard culture. Razzing,
Well, there's the Jerky Boys. Who were
that's what I was trying to think of, the Jerky Boys. They did prank calls. Are you saying prank calls or crank calls?
Crank calls.
I remember they were really popular at the time, too. So I guess...
Yeah, that started in 1989. Okay. So that might have been around the same time.
Yeah, that's true. So he wasn't, like, in a vacuum. But
no, certainly not. The Jerky Boys are big, though. That's for sure. Yeah. As a kind of, crank calls, reality, dealing with real situations, making fun of people. So beginning at 15, with his high school friends, Derek Harvey and Phil Giroux, Green would hang out at the Yuck Yucks Comedy Club in Ottawa, where they would see Norm Macdonald or Harland Williams perform. Eventually, Green himself, he performed too, and he became a regular for a while when he was still in high school.
Wow.
This is where he first realized that he could make money doing comedy, doing performance. Green often involved music in his comedic performances as well. Like, so at these high school assemblies, he would do rap songs. Mm-hmm. So you already mentioned this, but in 1990, when Green was 19, he formed the rap trio Organized Rhyme, consisting of Greg Campbell, Geordie Ferguson, and himself. His moniker was MC Bones.
Yeah, and I actually saw them in concert.
Oh, did you? Where?
I did. I think they opened for the Dream Warriors.
Yes.
At Lansdowne Park on Canada Day.
Yeah.
Oh, did you know that?
I didn't know about this particular performance.
I was there.
You were there.
I was like 15 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. Yeah. I think my friend and I like tried to meet them or something. It's hard to remember the chronology of these things, like when I first encountered the phenomenon, the local phenomenon that was Tom Green. But yeah.
Well, Organized Rhyme ended up being Green's first taste of success in the entertainment industry. The group got noticed by American record executives. They were flown to New York to record a single. Now, in retrospect, these guys are a joke, right? Like, they're really but this was the era of the Beastie Boys, and white rap groups were seen as potentially profitable. Even
they had one video that was very Beastie Boys-esque.
Yeah, clearly influenced.
But I remember at the time not really, again, kind of like the vacuum cleaner salesman thing. Like, I was like, is this supposed to be a joke or is this supposed to be serious?
Right.
Do they even know? You know?
I mean, I guess the very concept of a white rapper was already a little bit silly. I remember that feeling a little bit about the Beastie Boys too, who I liked a lot.
Right.
At least early on, I remember thinking, should I take them seriously? I mean, I enjoy this, but is this a joke? Is it ironic? You know, the Beastie Boys were totally sincere.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately they were.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like that Simpsons episode from the 90s where they're at a big Lollapalooza type music festival.
Yeah.
And one of the kids asks the other one, like, "Are you being ironic?" And he's like, "I don't even know anymore." I feel like I didn't even know anymore if those things were ironic or real, and like maybe the people making them didn't know either.
In the earliest Beastie Boys albums, like the lyrics especially are really jokey. They're like college humor is about drinking and girls.
Yeah,
and like
totally.
they're being trying to be funny. So, but I mean, while the beats are really cool, it's like really good production. So, and the Beastie Boys, as much as I like them, they were never very good rappers, quite frankly. Like they were pretty limited lyrically compared to other practitioners, let's say, even though they were fun and interesting and stuff.
Like Organized Rhyme was definitely limited lyrically, as I recall.
Yeah. So they were just trying it out. I mean, it was, in retrospect, obviously, since Tom Green was the main guy in it, they were a joke. They must be, because Tom Green's a comedian, right? But that's maybe, in retrospect, we're seeing it that way. Yeah. So they got a record deal in Canada from A&M Records. They released an album in 1992 called Huh, The Stiffening Against the Wall. So it's like it's a jokey title. So maybe it was pretty jokey. The song Check the OR was a single that won the Much Music Award for Best Rap Video, and it was nominated for a Juno.
I could sing that song to you right now, by the way, but I won't.
Go for it.
No. But I could if I wanted to.
Well, we didn't...
Check the OR.
So you remember that song, eh?
Well, with the record I have was actually just like multiple remixes of Check the OR. So I don't know any of their other songs. I didn't even know they had another song.
What does OR stand for?
Organized Rhyme.
Oh, right. Check the Organized Rhyme. Clever title. Clever name for the group.
Yeah.
Organized Rhyme. So Green describes a hip-hop show that Organized Rhyme performed at an actual hip-hop club in Toronto, where the crowd attempted to beat them up on the way out.
Really?
Organized Rhyme disbanded in 1993.
Why did the crowd attempt to beat them up?
Because they were not real rappers.
Oh. So it was like a real rap, like hip-hop fan crowd that was like, who are you and what's your poser deal?
The actual Toronto hip-hop scene did not take them seriously, and probably, I'm sure, would have resented some of their...
Well, it seemed like they were making fun of them, because...
Yeah, big problem. So,
maybe a little racially inflected.
Perhaps. Just a little bit. Green's hip-hop credentials allowed him to get a rap show at the University of Ottawa, as you already mentioned.
Radio.
It was Fridays at midnight to 2 a.m. This is where he met Glenn Humplick, who would become his co-host on the Tom Green Show. Glenn hosted a show in the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. slot, so they overlapped there. This was like an experimental music show that Glenn did. So Tom's hip-hop show, though, quickly kind of morphed into just a comedy show. And that's when it became what was the name of the show?
Midnight Caller.
The Midnight Caller. And now Glenn would co-host with him. The radio station had a cell phone. Very few people had cell phones. This was not common technology at the time.
And it was like this big, right?
Yeah, probably. So Tom would take the radio station's cell phone and go out in the field with it. So, for example, he would play hide and seek over the radio. He'd be out and about in Ottawa, calling clues to the radio station of his whereabouts.
Really?
He was, for this particular prank, he was a gag or whatever. He was dressed as a leprechaun. And audience members were out looking for him.
I don't remember that. Oh my gosh, I guess I didn't listen to it as much as I thought. That's hilarious.
He, on the Midnight Caller, he arranged a game of soccer on the front lawn of Parliament Hill at 2 a.m.
Fun.
Apparently 40 people showed up to
That's
play
so
soccer.
fun.
Yeah. He would get in the car, call in his location to the radio station where Glenn was manning the station, and ask people to join him on his drive around town. And so he had a train of like a convoy. The first Ottawa convoy. Dozens of cars following him around.
Amazing.
Which sounds very dangerous.
Well, yeah, but it's so...
Isn't it fun, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So it's like involving the audience in
It's not that dangerous. It's the middle of the night. It's Ottawa.
Yeah, just like...
I mean, it could have been icy.
That's right. Now, after high school, Glenn attended the Algonquin Community College program for radio broadcasting.
Okay.
This is like the community college in Ottawa. He did a 2-year program in television broadcasting. While at college, part of his program was to write a pitch to the local cable access station for a show. That's when he pitched them the Tom Green Show. On the strength of his notoriety as a radio host already, the pitch was accepted. So this was the Tom Green Show. Glenn Humplick joined Tom as his straight man and co-host. And this was essentially what the Tom Green Show would always be. In-studio silliness plus clips from the field.
And Glenn was there.
And
like,
Glenn was
always.
Glenn was there.
Was that Glenn's real personality? Like, do we have any sense of who Glenn is? Like,
sure. I think that was very much Glenn's personality, which is that he's just a nice guy. He's generally pretty quiet.
Yeah.
And he was the perfect whipping boy.
Why did he agree to be a professional whipping boy, do you think?
I just thought he was along for the ride, and he knew that the show was good, and he was happy to be part of it.
We should probably explain what we mean by whipping boy, because he sits there like a Ed McMahon type figure, but he gets a lot of pranks played on him.
He's there essentially. He's not witty.
No.
God bless Glenn. He doesn't have witticisms or comebacks. That's not what he's there for. He's there to just look at Tom and smile, and then Tom...
And he looks horrified and shocked.
And looks shocked and horrified, and Tom makes him do something really gross, or he...
sprays milk all over
him. He loves
him.
to spray milk at Glenn. This was a constant gag. You take out a bag of milk, good Canadian bagged milk, puncture a hole in it, and just squirt Glenn with...
Yeah. And there was one where he was he had an electric fly swatter, and he kept electrocuting Glenn.
Yeah, it was a fly swatter that was electrically charged to kill or stun bugs.
Definitely kill.
And he was going around just touching Glenn with it.
Chasing him.
Chased him around doing that. And that was the whole gag.
Yeah, electrocuting him.
Yeah.
Is that very nice, do you think?
This was Glenn's role. I mean, Tom was such an outlandish character. He needed someone that was just as normal. Just as non-responsive in a way to play off of. He was a perfect
he's not
statement.
non-responsive. He responds with shock and sort of oh my god, oh my god.
He's the He's the voice. He's the conscience.
Yeah.
Glenn is the conscience of the audience watching this. He's the one who is essentially the baseline by which you can judge Tom's craziness.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you need him there so that you understand.
You do need him there.
You need him there so you can understand how wild what Tom Green is doing.
And then they also have a third person always in the shot, which is Phil, right?
Phil Giroux.
And he's always there's a window behind Tom. And
on the set, yeah.
And Phil is on the other side of the window, just sitting there drinking out of a mug. He does nothing.
He does nothing but laugh. He laughs,
right,
he kind of throws his head back and laughs. Occasionally, though, he does get involved in a stunt or so.
Right, very occasionally.
The more active friend, longtime friend, I think friend from high school of Tom's, Derek Harvey, he co-wrote the show with Tom. Derek was often the one holding the camera when Tom was doing stunts, and often telling Tom what to do next, egging him on. So without Derek, this couldn't really work. And Derek and Tom are really close comedy partners. Derek Harvey would co-write Freddy Got Fingered with Tom. And Derek Harvey went along with him.
Hollywood movie.
Derek Harvey went along with him to MTV.
Amazing.
So a pretty interesting comedy duo. Derek Harvey still is a screenwriter.
And they also had local bands on the show, I think. Every episode, I think, was a different local band when it was on Rogers 22.
Yeah, they'd often feature different local bands.
Like Saturday Night Live style.
Exactly. Kind of like Saturday Night Live, yeah. Do you have any memories of the cable access years?
I remember watching it, and I remember, I didn't watch it religiously, like I said, but I do remember there were segments that, everyone would be talking about. And then, someone would have it on tape, and you'd eventually get to see it. Because people taped the show, and then it would be oh, you have to see this part. And it was often the parts where pranked his parents that were everyone would be talking about it, and everyone would tape it and watch it over and over. And the two that I remember the most being like that were, and I remember watching them with friends, were the one where the Slutmobile, and there was another one where he paints his parents' house plaid while they're away.
Yeah.
And they come back and they're horrified, of course. And his parents are really great straight men too, because his mom just seems like genuinely baffled and upset always, and his father she's like kind of quiet, and she's kind of like, oh, Tom, why are you doing this to me? And then his dad seems like annoyed, but also a little bit amused always.
Sure,
like,
Tom
he's
definitely
kind
gets
of
a
like,
sense of humor from his dad, I think.
yeah, so he's kind of like a little bit on Tom's side, but he's also like, this, you've gone too far this time.
Yeah, every time, yeah.
Yeah. So those two were really legendary. Just like the whole idea of pranking your parents in these like outlandish ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think like he was like in his 20s and living with his parents and really kind of played that up, the whole like,
Yeah.
like, I have no income, I live with my parents, and like I just torment them. And he kind of like would act like a sort of baffled kid in this, like when he was around his parents. Like when he painted the house plaid, there was this whole part where he's just like talking to the camera, and he's like, they're not grateful. It's like, I did so much work trying to make them the surprise, and they're not grateful. They're not grateful. And it's just like, it was so funny. Like, I seriously think my friends and I watched that like over and over, and it never got old.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's probably safe to say that if Tom Green didn't have his parents to ultimately be okay with the way he was pranking them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the show could have been as successful, because those were really some of the most iconic sketches that he ultimately did.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Tom Green in later years was American famous and MTV show, Oprah, for I believe it was a Mother's Day special, had Tom's parents on.
No way.
With Tom.
Really?
Yes. And this was after they were really, really mad at him for having pranked his grandmother.
Oh my God, I remember that. That was another one that was just like so.
So
I have no words.
So Tom presents his like sweet old grandmother with a briefcase.
No, so Derek comes over. I remember this. Derek comes over and is hanging out with Tom and his grandmother in the kitchen.
Mm.
And then Derek leaves, and Tom is like, oh, Derek left his briefcase. I wonder what could be inside.
Mm-hmm.
His grandmother is like this sweet old lady. And she's like, oh, I wonder. And they sit down together at the kitchen table. They open the briefcase, and it's full of vibrators.
Yeah.
Dildos and vibrators.
Different kinds, yeah. Different sizes and shapes.
Different
and colors.
sizes and shapes. Different colors. And different actions that they do when you press different buttons on them. And they're taking them out, and they're like, what could they be? What could they be?
The grandmother has no idea.
No idea. And they try like beating cream with it to see if
so let's see. Let's try different grandmotherly activities with these dildos and vibrators. So yeah, tries to beat an egg with the dildo.
An egg, right?
Tries to roll dough with one of the bigger ones.
Right.
She hangs them from her ears
as
earrings. And so this goes on for about 4 minutes.
And then
so when his parents finally
and he gets her to lick one of them.
And at the end, yes, and then he presents her with some fun dip, the sugary powder, usually eaten with a candy stick. He gets her to use one of the dildos as the stick from which to eat a vibrating like
right. So his grandmother is licking a vibrating dildo.
So when that was a really big hit, people loved that segment. Seems kind of mean.
A little.
when his parents saw that, so he kept that secret from his parents for quite a while. I guess he had filmed this in, I believe, in the Canadian years of the show. Eventually,
totally.
He managed to keep his parents from seeing the show, that segment. He actually, in his memoir, describes an elaborate scheme to stop them from seeing the show. He knew that they watched the show when it was broadcast.
Yeah.
And so he waited downstairs by the fuse box and flipped the fuse to the house to turn off the power at those 5 minutes.
Really?
When he knew the segment would be airing.
So he was seriously scared of his parents' reaction.
He was very scared. He knew he'd gone too far.
Right.
In the end, so then it worked. They'd fallen asleep that night. He found out, so wouldn't have seen it anyway.
Oh my
but
God.
it also meant that it wasn't recorded on their VHS
Right.
Because they would record the episodes and watch them later.
That is like kind of an ingenious way to
Yes,
set it.
but then later on, the show was broadcast. Because one of the things about the Tom Green show, its various iterations, is that it kept recycling the old clips, and sometimes it'd be re-edited, but they'd be brought to a new audience. So the Ottawa clips were then brought to a Canadian audience.
Sure, and that was one of the classics.
Yeah, that was a classic one that kept that recirculated. So when that was shown again in the MTV years, I guess the parents saw it and they flipped out, and I guess they threatened to sue him.
What about the grandmother? Was she?
The grandmother was devastated. If some aunt or uncle, I guess, an aunt or uncle threatened to sue Tom.
Oh my God. I always kind of hoped the grandmother was in on it, but I guess not.
No, she wasn't. And but this, just as this happened,
so mean.
Apparently just as this happened, Oprah called. And wanted Tom Green's parents on the show, and that is when they forgot everything, and they were quite happy to go talk to Oprah.
Sure, why not? And what did they say?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Yeah. I haven't seen it. I remember seeing it. I think I saw it at the time.
Okay,
but I forget.
okay.
Yeah. No, the Oprah segment is not on YouTube anywhere.
I'm pretty sure Oprah prevents any of her stuff from being available for free.
Oh, good point. Yeah, it's true. I never see any of her clips out there. Yeah. Tom Green's community access show goes from 94 to 95 to 96. So he continued to live in his parents' basement. And there's as he relates in his memoir, there's a battle with his parents in this era. I'm sure they don't appreciate being pranked, but he's getting reverse pranked by them. His dad, he tells a story about his dad trying to catch Tom in the shower and turning on the hot water so that he gets a cold blast when he's in the shower. So his parents are really kind of trying.
So his dad's a prankster, or he's just trying to get him to move out.
Yeah, both. They're trying to. The way Tom describes it is that his parents wanted him to leave the house, and this was one of the ways that.
So his dad deals with his problems by pranking.
As well.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. The show is very locally popular. Kids love it. Teens love it.
Oh, yeah.
Studio audience is really amped. You see those old episodes?
Yeah.
The kids are going nuts. They love it. They love it. And there's lots of coverage in the local press. In 1996, he filmed a pilot for CBC. After waiting 8 months to hear back, it was turned down. However,
it's a long time to wait.
I know, right?
Aaron, don't you hate waiting and waiting?
I hate waiting. I hate waiting.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, however, they showed the pilot to the Comedy Network, which was then a new station looking for Canadian content, and they picked it up. So now the show had a national audience. It was still produced in Ottawa, but it was airing nationally on the Comedy Network.
So they still make it at Rogers?
They still 22? Made it. It was a co-production of the Comedy Network and Rogers 22 Ottawa, and it was still in the same studio, but they had more money, so they updated the set. You can tell they have better props.
So they still did all their street pranks in Ottawa, right?
Yeah, they mostly are in Ottawa, but I believe it was the summer of 98 or maybe it was 99. They go on a road tour across Canada, trying to get as much material for the show that would be airing.
And that's when he humped the moose.
That's when he humped the moose, and there's actually quite a bit of stuff out there. It's often hard to tell when you're watching the show whether it's the American version, the Canadian version, because you're seeing the stunts the same. Yeah. You're seeing material that may have been recorded 5 years earlier.
Right.
Being re-edited and repurposed. And so anyway, there's a lot of stuff out, a lot of stunts from that cross-Canada road trip that was paid for by the Comedy Network. So so the show airs on the Comedy Network from 97 to 99. It's building steam along the way. This is when I first noticed the show. And in 1999, MTV picked up the show. This was after a wild pitch meeting where Tom Green, in an LA office with all the MTV executives, came in and sprayed them all with shaving cream and just did his Tom Green stuff.
Of course he had to.
He had to do that, and it worked. Apparently he showed them several clips. One of the clips was him drinking milk directly from a cow's udder.
Right.
Which was considered one of his kind of standout
masterpiece.
Shocking. gross out. Yeah, it's kind of a gross out sort of thing, right?
I suppose. Yeah,
it does seem dangerous. A lot of his stunts are dangerous. It's physical comedy.
Yeah.
Pranks, stunts, goofing. It's very, very physical comedy. It's something that I appreciate more in retrospect.
He gets really close to animals that could hurt him.
Sometimes.
And he also eats things that could hurt him.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
I wonder if he ever got really sick from any of the stuff that he ingested.
We watched an early, it was the Christmas special from 1995.
We sure did.
So this was the early earliest version of the Tom Green Show when it was still just an Ottawa cable access show. And it's just Tom Green in front of a camera for an hour while Christmas music is playing. And he just brings out various props and does something crazy with them.
Yeah,
so,
including eating cat food.
He eats cat food while reading aloud from the box of cat food.
It's like performance art.
Yeah, it's absurd performance art, especially those earliest years. That's what it was.
Yeah,
and you see, it was just him trying to see what would do the weirdest thing possible.
Totally.
And see what would make people laugh or shock people or just have any resonance at all. And he's just totally. I mean, he clearly has an idea of what he'll do because he has the cat food there ready on set. He has pancake mix that he then dumps on his head.
What appears to be mayonnaise that he also pours on his head.
Some kind of, honestly, it looked like some kind of more like a gel than mayonnaise.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. It was something he like rubs this
white stuff.
White stuff, could be mayonnaise, through his hair while having an imaginary dialogue with a guy called Dan. A guy called Dan, and it's like. He's just talking about how Dan and him don't get along anymore. But anyway, this goes on. For an hour.
Yeah.
And it's funny. We did not sit there and watch this for an hour.
No, we didn't.
But it is very funny to skip through it and like drop in every couple of minutes and see what he's doing
like,
now.
Oh my God, it's still going.
Now what is he doing? He has a boom box playing. He wraps his head in aluminum foil. At the beginning of the episode, he teases everyone by saying that Anne Murray is going to call into the show with a Christmas message, and she never calls in.
And he's also playing the piano at the beginning.
Yeah, he plays the piano. Yeah, again, his musical. He likes to do musical stuff.
Yeah.
His bits are the kind of thing that get a lot of people talking. They're shocking. People remember them. There's a lot of press coverage. So, after MTV picks up the show, the show moves production to New York. As soon as it goes on the air, it blows up. It's super duper popular. It's the most popular thing on MTV. Green is suddenly a international celebrity doing celebrity things. He's the darling of, he's kind of the new darling of the network. Immediately, this is still 1999. The same year the show debuted, Green gets a big contract to make commercials for Pepsi. Pepsi won. And he did something like 15 different commercials for them. I remember those commercials.
Those were during the years that I did not have a TV. I'm realizing that's why I never saw.
You didn't see Tom Green at his height.
No.
Yeah, because this is all on MTV. Mm-hmm. A comic song that he originally performed on the MTV version of his show was released as a standalone music video, and it became the #1 video on MTV. It was called the Bum Bum Song, and it featured Tom Green. He was going around Seattle pressing his butt against various objects and then describing it in song.
Okay. I'm not aware of this.
My butt is on the rail. My butt is on the rail. Things like that.
Sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah. And so he gets...
My butt is on the rail.
TV show's really big. Immediately, he's in movies. He gets a role in Road Trip, a 2000 college comedy directed by Todd Phillips. He's the guy who would go on to do The Hangover and The Joker. Really, yeah. And
have you seen Road Trip?
I did see it at the time. And Tom Green ends up kind of stealing the show with being the outlandish, crazy guy, his wacky stunts.
Did you like the movie?
It wasn't exactly for me.
Yeah.
For mine, I rewatched the scene where Tom Green puts a mouse in his mouth. Oof. So he was trying to feed a pet snake, a friend's pet snake, and the snake won't eat the mouse, so he's trying to show how to eat the mouse. And that was apparently improvised. Tom Green himself decided to put the mouse in his mouth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Road Trip is a huge, unexpected success. It had a $16 million budget. It grossed $120 million.
Wait, can we back up a second? Was the mouse alive or dead?
It was a live mouse.
Oh, my God. Okay, keep going.
It was a live mouse, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a live mouse. It crawls into his mouth, it crawls out again. Apparently he had to do it like a dozen times after he did it the first time.
Talk about unhygienic, Jesus Christ. Gross. Okay, keep going.
So if you look at the promotional material for Road Trip, Road Trip comes out at the height of the Tom Green show's popularity, so he's front and center on the studio, on like the posters and stuff. So he's like the main guy in this huge successful movie, right?
Yeah.
So he gets other roles. He had a small part in Charlie's Angels, playing a wacky ship's captain named the Chad. After the Road Trip movie comes out and it's so big, they call him back to do more.
Oh.
And they add it into Charlie's Angels. Now,
okay.
Let's say that Tom Green is a typecast. His
Yeah.
type is unhinged lunatic.
Yeah,
right.
for
and
sure.
and so in these more standard comedy movies, he appears as the wacko.
Right.
Right. Everyone else, other people are normal.
He's a little
movie
bit of
types,
spice.
Little bit, yeah. But he's the only reason you remember Road Trip, right? I mean, really.
I've never seen it, but
Yeah.
it's the only thing I ever knew about it was he was in it.
Right. So Tom Green's career is blowing up. He's in movies now.
Oh yeah.
Importantly, on the set of Charlie's Angels, starring and produced by Drew Barrymore. He meets Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore and Green become a Hollywood it couple for a time. They played this relationship up as if it were a kind of a joke in the media, but behind the irony was a real relationship. Green hosted Saturday Night Live in November 2000. And
Yeah, I remember watching that.
And Barrymore and Green announced that they would be married on air on the show. And at the end of the show, Barrymore like ditches him, leaves him at the altar.
And then he like crawls across the floor crying and stuff. Yeah.
Now, despite these public shenanigans, Tom Green took the relationship seriously, as he describes in his memoir. He's diplomatic, but he points out that Barrymore was basically not someone he could rely on emotionally.
They were like in their 20s, right?
I guess so. He points out that when he got cancer, it's the next thing that happens to him, that she basically disappeared and wasn't available to him, which is pretty bad. Now, this is a whirlwind couple of years. Hit show, hit movies, celebrity girlfriend, lots of money. Tom Green gets testicular cancer. Everybody thought it was another of his sick pranks.
Yeah, it sounds like it, right?
It sounds exactly like one
that
he would do. But it indeed was true. He had to have his right testicle removed, as well as his lymph nodes where the cancer potentially had spread. It did not, ultimately. But the lymph node removal is a much more difficult, involved procedure. So Green stopped production of his MTV show to recover from cancer. He did do, however, a 1-hour cancer special where he documents his cancer treatment, including his lymph node surgery. What did you think? We watched this together.
We watched it,
It was good.
It was, and it was also like, whoa, they actually filmed the whole surgery. Like, you saw everything.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was an incredibly unique tone.
Yes.
Like,
because it was like half his normal silly tone and half like super serious.
Being serious.
And like his life was really in danger and he was like terrified to go get the surgery. He was trying to like be funny as he's like being like going under to get his like very serious surgery. So you could see like him struggling with these like this public persona and like what he was really feeling.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, his performance is you do. You get a lot of emotional honesty in it behind all the gags. You know, he still does the same Tom Green kind of foolery. So he gets he has as a guest on the show the oncologist who treated him to talk about testicular cancer, and then to demonstrate to the audience how you should examine yourself for testicular cancer, he gets his buddy Phil to come out from behind the window and drop his pants and be examined by the doctor. It's all blurred out. Another thing he does is he sings a silly song exhorting his audience to touch your balls, feel your balls. It just goes on and on. Repeating that as a way to check yourself for cancer, which is indeed what you should do.
And Glenn actually gets to like see the removed testicle and the lymph nodes in a tray and stuff.
Yeah. It's just, it is a really interesting and episode, and it really actually holds up. It still is good. The special was nominated for a Peabody Award, actually.
Oh, really? It was?
Now, again, that cancer special was maybe the pinnacle of Tom Green's sort of success, actually, because in 2001, Tom Green, so after recovering from cancer, Tom Green co-wrote with his friend Derek Harvey and directed and starred in his own vehicle, his own movie. It was called Freddy Got Fingered. Future topic of Sweater Weather. It's an absurd, outlandish comedy. It vaguely resembles his experience as a young man living in his parents' house, trying to launch an artistic career. It's
absurdist, it's bizarre, it's hilarious, and I love it.
Yeah, and it had a $14 million budget. It earned just about the same amount at the box office, so it was considered a flop. Critics lambasted it, and the movie became like a meme for like what a bad movie is. And it's unfair, and
totally unfair.
Frankly, it's Philistinism is what it is. The bunch of Philistines.
Well, Yeah, because it's like lowbrow or whatever, but like actually it's incredibly creative and incredibly funny.
Yes.
So it's like, and you know, I have to say, like, I never saw it at the time. Like, I never saw it till recently because I just assumed it was bad. Like, I just believed that it was the worst movie ever made.
Oh, okay. Then we watched it together a couple years ago.
We watched it together a few years ago, and it was really funny.
It was funny.
Like, I was like, this is really good. Like,
yeah.
It's like nonstop hilarity.
The movie made $300 million. Excuse me. The movie made $30 million in DVD sales, so it turned a profit ultimately, and it is a cult movie now, and it is aged very well. I have a theory about this. As I said already, the Tom Green Show for me seems funnier now than it did at the time.
Yeah,
in
me
a
too.
lot of ways. Freddy Got Fingered. I saw it at the time. I don't think I liked it.
Oh.
I don't think I did, but I like it now. I have a theory about this, about like the physical comedy of the absurd things he does. Like, actually, physical comedy considered lowbrow
Yes.
is actually ages very well because it has nothing to do with...
It's timeless.
Because it has nothing to do with the news.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with knowing this reference.
Yeah.
It's just about people doing weird things with their body.
Yeah.
And that's Tom Green's at his best.
He does a lot of physical comedy.
He does a lot of physical comedy,
Yeah.
and it actually ends up aging well. Like the Three Stooges, how long was that on the air for?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
this stuff that's like 1950s black and white. I'm growing up in the 90s, seeing this stuff on TV still, and you still get a chuckle out of some of
Yeah,
the
like
stuff.
even like Charlie Chaplin and stuff still.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting. And like I also remember being like sort of raised to be snobby about physical humor.
Yeah.
And I just believed that it was like, yeah, too lowbrow to be funny.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not easy either. Like, I think that I had this impression that this guy's just like flopping around being ridiculous, but it's not.
No.
Like, not just anybody can be funny like that.
No, you have to be very physically adept. Maybe you have to be young.
And you also kind of have to have
healthy.
the right body type and stuff.
He's
Like,
long
it
and
helps
lanky,
he
and that
has
works.
Yeah, it really
Kind of like Jim
works.
Carrey. Jim Carrey, long, lanky guy, could always do weird stuff with his body, right?
Yeah, he had a special talent for that, and also like Michael Richards on Seinfeld.
Yep,
And
yep, that's right.
like it helps to have that kind of like
Yeah.
long, lanky limbed.
It also
body.
helps to be tall and not easily intimidated when you're
Right.
out on the street
Right.
sticking microphones in people's
Right,
faces and
right,
trying to
right.
piss them off.
Yeah.
That's another thing that Tom's body allowed him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
After cancer, he gets divorced as well. After his movie failure, Tom Green wanted to return to TV. But he says this in his memoir. Soon after I got sick and we stopped production of The Tom Green Show, the entire crew left for other work. Half of them started to work on this new show called Jackass. By the time I was cured of my disease, they were all gone. So Jackass would become the long-running comedy stunt show franchise. They just recently had another movie out. Maybe that's the 5th or 6th movie. Tom Green comments on how familiar some of Jackass's gags were to his own.
Right.
For example, there was one where Tom walked around on crutches and had a neck brace on and stuff and was pretending to fall down and getting people to come help him again. It's kind of mean, right?
Yeah.
I guess Jackass did this exact same
Oh, wow.
gag. Yeah, walking around on crutches. However, if you look at Jackass, you'd see that what they did really was amp up the stunts, the stunt stuff. They really amped that up. And the gross out stuff and the stunt stuff.
Okay,
That's
I've
what
never seen Jackass, but
Yeah, it's a bunch of guys. I mean, there's a bunch of guys egging each other on, punching each other in the balls, launching each other with catapults, like things like that, like really skateboard-based, skateboard-informed stunt humor. And so... So Tom Green, he doesn't say this. This is my own interpretation. I feel like maybe after cancer, he has a different sense of what he might want to do in comedy. We talked about how, in a way, timeless physical comedy is. Unfortunately, it is something you have to be relatively young and healthy to do well. The older you get, the less able you are to do things physically, the less expressive you are, the less expressive your body can be, And so, and maybe, this is just my guess, maybe like an encounter with his mortality and having cancer made him think that, wow, I have to develop a kind of comedy that I can age into. So in 2003, Tom Green started the new Tom Green Show on MTV. This was an attempt at really a rather straightforward talk show.
right.
It was nightly, and he had celebrity guests on. They had field pieces still as segments. They continued to be the strong point of the show, but I noticed that they were softer and sweeter. We watched, Tom Green, there's this whole segment where all he does, he's in a small town in Louisiana on a cross-country trip. And all he does is like he makes motor sounds with his mouth with an old man that he finds.
And he plays with puppies. And
it is a cute little segment.
And there was another great one where he got a woman to dress up as a rabbit and ride a tandem bike in bunny costumes with him and then sit on the curb smoking.
He just drives around and he asks people, hey, do you want to ride somewhere? If you want to ride, you're going to have to dress up as a bunny. Is that cool? And so he gets a woman to do that with him. And it's like they have a fun day out.
Yeah, they ride a bike together. And then there's also like several funny shots where they sit on the edge of the sidewalk. Smoking.
As in their bunny costumes. Yeah. So
she's like, this was a real pick-me-up on a hard day.
Oh, yeah, because her car had broken down. No, it had been towed.
Yeah.
And so she was having a bad day, and this was just kind of fun thing for her to do.
But can I also just say, like, while we're talking about this, that some of the segments that worked, like with the Canadian in Canada, don't really work in the States.
Yeah.
Or that worked in Ottawa don't work in New York or LA or wherever he is. Because
very true.
He, there was this one segment that he did in Ottawa where he drove his whole studio audience home.
He had basically chartered like a city bus.
Yeah.
And took every member of his whoever wanted to go.
Yeah.
Like
drove them home,
probably
like
30 or 40 of them, and drove them to their houses.
And then went into their houses.
And then did a home invasion segment.
And tried to wake their parents and their siblings up.
And it works. And it works on a whole, like maybe a dozen.
Yeah, like people let him in, and they like get out of bed, and they like don't freak out, and they like let him play their piano,
and
they
give
him a snack and stuff. In the States, no, they're like threatening to call the police. They're like,
he tried to do the same thing in New York, and he doesn't get into anyone's house.
No, there's literally people threatening him and like saying they're calling the police. And being like they're just mad and they're like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So not the same.
It's not the same. Not the same. And the new Tom Green show was not the same. These, for as nice as these kind of softer, sweeter segments were, they were submerged in this like long, shapeless blather with celebrities.
Yeah.
Like that was never the strong point of the Tom Green show, were the guests, or the studio stuff was never the best part.
Yeah, like they're just goofing around. He's not asking them questions or anything.
No, it just doesn't really work. People want, from a celebrity interview, you want like juicy details about it. And he was trying to like improvise with them, joke around with them, and most celebrities can't do that. You need maybe another comedian can do it a little bit, but...
And I guess like you want banter, you want to bring out the personality of the celebrity, right?
Yeah.
And it somehow just ended up being more about him, and like even though you could kind of see him trying to deflect it back to them, or reflect, like they would end up kind of it was like it was about him more than it was about the celebrity, and then also he was trying to get them to be silly in like his way.
Yeah.
And like most people can't do that.
Well, celebrities won't also, it's harder to bully them into doing something silly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, he was trying to razz them, and they were like unrazzable.
Yeah, they're celebrities. They're not going to let you razz them. Really.
Yeah.
So they're very careful of their public persona, right?
That's right.
So it didn't work. It was canceled after, I guess it had good reviews. I mean, what I saw of it.
How many episodes were there?
It ran for 11 weeks.
Okay.
So just a few months. Tom Green continues trying to do a talk show. That's what he wants to do. So in 2006, he launches his own live web talk show. This would run in different iterations until 2015. Sometimes this is called Tom Green Live. I think the people know this mostly as Tom Green's House, because it was filmed in his house. It was broadcast on the internet, and it was available on his website, his own website.
I remember that existing.
Celebrities, mostly comedians, would come over, and he would interview them. Now, this was, again, very early use of a newly available technology. That was the internet. Now, this was 2 years before YouTube had any live streams. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't do a show like this on YouTube yet. Mm-hmm. But he was doing it and live streaming it.
So YouTube did exist already?
YouTube launched the same year, 2006, but you could not do a live stream for 2 more years. It wasn't until 2008 that YouTube added a live stream function. Now, in a 2020 interview with Joe Rogan, who was a guest on Tom Green's House back in the day, Joe Rogan asks Tom Green about, like, he points out that you were an originator of doing this kind of essentially like a talk show, a podcast talk show. And Tom Green admitted that he was too early, that he was never able to monetize the show, despite at times having a huge audience. He actually mentions one show where he happened to get 1 million viewers.
Wow.
But because he was broadcasting it himself, his web provider tried to charge him $30,000 for the extra traffic to his site. There was so much traffic to his site that they were charging him for it.
Yeah.
So he was being punished for financially punished for having a large audience instead of gaining from it. So these were the kind of problems he had hosting and broadcasting his own show. He realized in retrospect that he should have brought the show to YouTube early on. In fact, people from YouTube, when they started live streaming stuff, called him and asked him if he wanted to do that, and he did not. He never followed up with it. He thought that he needed to own his own material. I mean, it's hard to...
How could you know? Yeah.
How could you really know?
Yeah.
But obviously the way that YouTube went, YouTube is now where a lot of comedians are able to make a lot of money. They have a totally independent career there. You can build a big channel, and you monetize by selling advertising. If Tom Green had gotten on that early, he would have had a channel probably in the millions, you know? And he never did that, though. I mean, he didn't get on... I don't think he got on YouTube until 2012 or something like that. So, and he has a fairly sizable YouTube channel, but it's like not in the millions, let's say. So, in 2009, Green appeared on The Celebrity Apprentice. He was fired by Donald Trump on the 3rd episode while acting as a project manager. This was he made Trump mad when he woke up late the day of the competition. He had been out drinking with Dennis Rodman.
Wow.
Another contestant.
Fancy. Oh, he was another contestant.
Yeah.
Okay. So wait a minute. Like, he was I've never seen Celebrity Apprentice, so I just don't really understand what they were doing, but it doesn't matter.
You do challenges.
Okay.
And then people get voted off. Or like Donald Trump fires you. Okay. And this was a really big hit show, right? So anyway, but this is 2009. In 2010, Tom Green started doing stand-up comedy again. He hadn't done stand-up since his teen years. He started doing stand-up partly because he needed the money. This is what he said to Joe Rogan. And he continues to be a stand-up comedian to this day. He's done world tours as a stand-up comedian. He's pretty good. We watched some of his stand-up comedy. It's pretty good. I'd go see Tom Green.
Oh, yeah, totally.
In 2021, he moved back to Canada. He now lives in a house on 100 acres on White Lake. This is near Ottawa.
Sounds pretty nice.
And you can see him, especially on Instagram. He will post long live videos of him building his new podcasting cabin. He's going to have a podcasting cabin out in the field.
And he has a dog called Charlie.
He does.
I follow him on Instagram.
I always take a look at what he's doing, and you just kind of want to see. He's a nice guy now. Like his image now is that he's sweet.
I know, it's kind
of
jarring because like, and then you kind of wonder, or I kind of wonder. I'm like, is this who he really was all along, or like?
I have to say that
he's so different. Yeah.
He was always in persona.
Yeah.
Like he was always being that aggressive. I mean, even in his normal social interactions. To be honest, seeing him in contemporary interviews, to me, he seems very nervous.
Oh.
He seems very anxious talking about himself and being honest. And he often does it in a tone where you wonder if he's still being ironic or not. It just is. It is interesting to see what he's like on Instagram now.
Yeah.
He's not.
Like he's trying to be kind of authentic.
He's not funny. Like it's not funny.
No, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but he's not doing jokes or
No. He's like being super earnest and like playing the piano and like making dinner with his parents and talking about how much he loves nature and hanging out with his dog and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's in retirement. He's in semi-retirement. He still does comedy shows. I think last week he was in Kingston. He did a show in Kingston.
And he also kind of got a boost to his fame pretty recently during lockdown. COVID lockdown, when Drew Barrymore started her daytime talk show, the Drew Barrymore Show, and she had him on as a guest, and it was like the first time they talked
in like 15 years.
In 15 years, yeah. And then she had him on again, at least twice.
Yes.
And so that kind of gave him a bit of a boost, I think, in terms of people like remembering
Sure.
his existence.
Well, around
and-
the same time. No, I mean, people remember Tom Green, but just he's not that prevalent.
No, I know, but he was
anymore.
like never as famous as Drew Barrymore. And her TV show was like very watched by a lot of people during that period. I think
Okay.
it still is.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Drew Barrymore show was like one of the top viewed daytime TV shows.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was on there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Rogan's like the biggest podcast in the world, I believe, and he was on it twice in 2020.
Okay.
So he certainly has a lot of profile still,
Yeah.
but he's just not.
But he's not living his life like a celebrity.
No, he's not living like a celebrity life.
Although he is like constantly making Instagram videos,
Mm-hmm.
which is an interesting choice.
He lives alone. I wonder if he's lonely. And this is like part of what he does to connect with people. Is
Yeah.
just social
Although like
media.
his parents seem to be there a lot, and like who knows, he might have a girlfriend or something.
Oh,
It's
maybe
just-
for sure. This could still be. We shouldn't be reading too much into the authenticity of
Totally.
it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I'm glad. I'm always happy to see a new post from Tom Green.
But you're worried about him. You think he's lonely.
I think he's doing fine. He has a big, beautiful house. He has lots of projects. He
Well,
has
if he
his
wants
family
to be,
nearby.
if he wants to be friends, like I would totally be friends with him.
He can make up finally for that "Where's Adam?"
Yeah.
gag. Tom Green, a real innovator. And I'm glad to see he's doing well and he's living life.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to revisit the Tom Green show.
Mm-hmm.
Any closing thoughts on Tom Green?
Well, I always like kind of say this, but I like it better now than
Yeah.
I did at the time.
I think we're choosing the right stuff.
Yeah.
Where we're watching it again and liking it better now.
I do think that he was actually doing something really creative, really innovative, and that he didn't really get credit for it because it was.
And he did it himself. It was independent.
Yeah.
He developed this whole thing with his friends.
I mean, he got credit for it in the sense that he became very popular,
He did.
famous, but like he didn't get credit for it in the sense that he also like remained kind of like a dismissible joke in the media and stuff, and seen as like incredibly lowbrow, incredibly ridiculous, and like what is this world coming to that people are watching this? You know, I feel like there was a lot of that.
Well, he has an interesting aside in his memoir where he talks about much of his performance when he was really famous was pranking the media as well. There was a Monica Lewinsky special.
Yeah,
where
that was good. I
He
remember
pretended
that.
that Monica and Lewinsky and him were going to be making.
He just said they had a big announcement.
Yeah,
to
and
make.
it just and also the marriage with Drew Barrymore often had this kind of pranking the media sort of element to it. And he points out that you can only make fun of the media so long before they get their revenge on you.
Sure.
He
And I
felt
mean,
that
Freddy
happened.
Got Fingered. I feel like I read somewhere, and I can't remember. I think I read it a long time ago, but he was saying like it was kind of a prank to even like get this movie made. That
Yeah.
like it's the title is Freddy Got Fingered, and they were allowed to do it, and they
Yeah.
got like a budget for it, and they made it,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, I think in a sense, he felt like he had, like, at least in this one interview, which I cannot remember where it was, he said
Yeah.
that, like, he and his friends, he and his colleagues kind of felt like they'd pranked Hollywood by, like, making this movie.
Yeah.
At the same time,
They
though,
also
like,
thought it would be very popular.
Yeah, they did.
On one hand, I do appreciate that he didn't, like, he still just did the crazy, wacky, totally outlandish movie that he wanted to do. But at the same time, he'd been rewarded for this behavior in many ways.
Yeah.
He thought he was going to get rewarded again for it, and he didn't. The exact opposite happened
Yeah.
with the movie.
which is,
But
I
I
mean, now
appre-
it's hard to
You might, the phrase
see
selling.
why people hated it so much. Like, it is actually really funny.
Yeah.
Like, bad comedies fail because they're not funny. They're boring, right?
Yeah.
Like, that movie is not boring
No.
at all.
No. You remember the scene? There's no through line that matters, but there's scenes, tons of set pieces.
Yeah.
Rip Torn is the dad. He's great.
He's amazing. And, like, that movie, I have to say, like, if I'm feeling sad or, like, down, there's parts of it that I can just bring to mind. And I just laugh and I feel better.
Well, the future episode of Sweater Weather for sure. We'll be talking about Tom Green again in the future.
Yes.
Freddy Got Fingered.
Freddy Got Fingered.
All right.
Can't wait. Thanks,
Okay.
Aaron.
All right. Thanks, Naomi, for talking about Tom Green with me. And thank you, everyone out there, for watching and listening. Talk to you next time.
Bye.